Hello and welcome to Tools in the Shed, a podcast powered by CarsGuide, back for 2021 and ready to rip into car stuff that's caught our eye this week. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James, and with me are Adventure Editor Crafty.
Hello.
And our own Grand Imperial Poobah, Mal. This week, we're discussing the cars we waved a fond and some not so fond farewell to in 2020. We'll look at 3 recent entrants to the CarsGuide garage, and we'll catch up with the richest lunatic in the cosmos in this week's Muskwatch. So stay with us. But first of all, a story that obviously resonated with people through the week. It's one in a series that we've done over time, but the most recent is of Rust in Pieces, is a story that Chesto authored, and he noted 8 cars that have departed the scene since the close of 2020. And it was an interesting one right across the spectrum. And really, it's either lackluster sales or a change of corporate direction. That's what he's theorising, but I've got to say it's always lackluster sales. That means a car leaves a little earlier than you thought it was going to. He notes that we're going to spend the next 12 months welcoming a whole lot of fresh metal and reviewing it and all of that stuff. But these are the ones that have gone. So if it's all right with you guys, we'll just kick off and look at each of them briefly. And the first one is the Endura, and from Ford. So Ford has all of a sudden got a pretty packed lineup in terms of SUVs, and the Endura is surplus to requirements. What do you make of that, Mal?
I am not overly surprised that the Endura hasn't fired in Australia. We all said from the moment it arrived, it was a brand new nameplate no one was familiar with. They were launching with a diesel-only product. The product itself was halfway through its model life when it arrived in Australia. It only had 5 seats, and the job it was trying to do was fill the boots of Territory, which was available as a proud 7-seater. It was in trouble from the word go. And look, Ford says they've consolidated their range because they've added the Puma and Escape. But no, we know that they're
no. Simply no.
Well, Enduro, Chesto makes the point that sales went down 40% in 2020. It's been in market less than 2 years.
But it never really fired.
It never really got there. Yeah. So he says that segment, 91,000 vehicles in 2020, 1,311 of them were Enduras.
And Ford will also tell you that they do offer a 7-seater in the Everest, but it starts at $50,000, and it is not as car-like to drive as what people enjoy in something like a Hyundai Santa Fe or a Territory or Mazda CX-9, Toyota Kluger, that sort of thing. So that doesn't surprise me, the Endura. But I'm really glad they achieved it. I'm really glad we got a unique model name. They put a lot of thought into it.
Well, next up, Crafty, it's a car that I know is near and dear to your heart. It's the Hyundai Veloster. The number of hours that you've logged, the seat time that you've had in Velosters.
That's right.
It's kind of frightening.
Well, I know Crafty's always aspired to buy one of those 3-door Troopy X-Ambos.
Exactly.
And hasn't been able to quite make the stretch. So the Veloster has been the next best thing.
The next best thing, you reckon?
It's so to steal your thunder there, Crafty.
It's so you, Crafty. It's so you.
It is,
it's a bit oddball. The 2 doors on one side,
that's
one
right.
on the other.
A little bit of this and nothing of that. I spent 0 hours in the Veloster, so
I must say
I didn't do enough yoga to fold myself down into
it.
Right. I must say I didn't get the chance to drive the 2nd generation Veloster either.
Oh, there you go.
No, neither did I.
Spent plenty of time in the 1st gen. And when it arrived, it made a lot of sense. Toyota didn't offer a Celica anymore. It was really well priced. That was a much earlier in the kind of the explosion of SUVs though. And now we've got things like Konas that are small and cheap and funky looking SUVs, CHRs and lots of others.
Well, that's actually the point that Chesto made in his story. where he said, look, it wasn't a disaster. They sold more than 600 of them last year, and that's more than MX-5 and BRZ and 86 and all that stuff. But it's Hyundai saying, no, we're going to concentrate on our N and N-line stuff, and Veloster, they're not going to bring an N or N-line version of it here. We're just going to do other things that'll be even more popular. That's their thinking.
And, you know, it was costing Hyundai a lot of money to bring that car to Australia. My understanding was that we were the only right-hand drive market.
Right.
And the Veloster, as discussed, fundamentally has 2 doors on the passenger side and 1 door on the driver's side. And so for, you know, that all has to switch over for right-hand drive, which means Australia was getting a completely bespoke side pressing.
Which Mini famously didn't do with its first Clubman. Do you remember that? The first Mini Clubman of the new generation had the door on the wrong side, the bigger door.
Yeah, good point.
It had it on the roadside, and they didn't bother. Which is odd, given that Mini is such. You know, you'd think right-hand drive might figure in their strategy, but anyway.
Yeah.
Look, the next one is it's not a big surprise. This is not a big surprise. The Abarth 124 Spider. So, you know, Fiat's take on the MX-5 with its own engine and a tweaked exterior. Talk about not firing. 58 of them sold over 12 months in 2020, and you don't see many of them.
Crafty, did you manage to?
Again,
this is I know this is another Crafty favourite.
We're pouring Crafty into a hole here.
I'm sure Chesto wrote this piece just to,
with you in mind,
just to show me how many vehicles I didn't get into.
Sit tight. There are some cars you've lived with.
No, I'm just imagining the Craft garage because, you know, next to the Veloster is the Abarth one, Spider, absolutely. And then your Navara. Yeah,
that's right.
Well, that's because Land Rover stopped making an open roof Defender. So the next best thing for crafting is the Abarth 124.
But I mean, really,
there you go.
That car. I mean, no one. I would argue that 99.9% of the population had no idea it even existed, and those particular aficionados that had to have one probably bought one in the first 5 minutes, and then trying to sustain any market for that car was pushing it uphill in a big way.
Yeah, and then throw in the fact that it was troubled from the beginning. It was originally intended to be an Alfa Romeo.
An Alfa, yeah, for sure.
So, you know, last minute decisions. No, let's make it a Fiat, and you know. Rapid redesigns and things like that. It's never been what it intended to be.
I think that was partially driven, wasn't it, Mal, by Marchione saying no Alfa is going to be built outside of Italy. And so
that's my understanding.
Logistically, they had to build it outside of Italy. So ipso facto became a Fiat. Yeah.
And then most recently, I believe the UK pulled out of right-hand drive.
Right. Yeah, I know Crafty gave me the tip on that when the UK pulled it.
Yeah, of course.
It was sad. I could see his lower lip trembling, actually, when we were conversing about that.
So if the UK...
Can we get onto Holden, for God's sakes? Come on.
There's a quote.
Well, look, the next one is not Holden.
Can I just make one final point, sorry, on the Abarth?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, of course.
So it was... My understanding was that the decision to make 2 products from the one platform started very early on with Mazda, with the MX-5, and therefore it's not hard to presume that the Abarth played a big role in securing as much investment that the ND MX-5 managed to secure, and therefore made the ND MX-5 so special. So it does make me a little bit nervous about the next MX-5.
Right.
If this platform sharing arrangement hasn't worked this time, hopefully they can come up with another one. Maybe, you know, a baby Porsche.
Yes. All jokes aside, this comes from an MX-5 owner. I know you have an NA MX-5 in your garage, Mel, so it cuts close to the bone for you. Very important.
Yeah, but it's very important for the brand as well, the MX-5.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So anyway, eyes peeled.
All right. Well, another one that featured actually in the last podcast of last year in terms of best Aussie cop cars is the Chrysler 300 SRT. So the classic rear-wheel drive, big Hemi V8 powered sedan is finally, look, Chesto says it's not confirmed, but reports say that it's for the chop. And it managed 218 sales in 2020, which is not a lot of cars, but most of them were probably to the police in various states. And now they'll be casting around for something else to replace that. So it's a goner, Chesto reckons.
It is a very old car. I think I attended
True.
the initial launch of that car that has really not changed that much since.
Yeah.
In I think it was 2012.
1985. Oh no, 20. Oh, that's right. Okay.
2012. So here we are in 2021.
Right, 2012.
So and it's a 6.4 litre V8. No turbos.
A little bit thirsty.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad we've had it so long. But clearly Australia doesn't agree. Yes.
I remember in a past life setting up some photographs for a magazine that I was working for, and Supercars driver Warren Luff was next to me in a HSV car. I was in that SRT 300, and we were setting up to do a little stoppy burnout, and it turned into the smokiest, summer nat style cloud that covered half the suburb, and all I could see out of the vaporized rubber was his white teeth smiling at me. They do pretty good burnouts. All right, so finally, crafty, one that you can sink your teeth into, the Holden Colorado, which actually really means the final death knell of Holden, as the last few examples of new Holdens dribble out of, showrooms. Somehow they're finding their way into customers' hands. In December, 28 Holdens went out the door, but all of them were 4x4 examples of the Colorado. Crafty, how does that leave you feeling? What are your thoughts?
I don't mind the Colorado. I was last in a Z71, so the sort of more than a sticker pack edition of the Colorado, and we had a great time. Very capable. Pretty good on road. I have a little bit of a spiritual tie to Holden, and it's not the Dalai Lama. My first car was a Holden, a HK, and then I had a Premier a couple of years ago that I unsuccessfully tried to restore, and a mate of mine bought it off me and has successfully restored it. So I still, I look back on Holdens with a certain degree of fondness. So, it's a shame. Like I say, Colorado, pretty good unit.
Yep. It is a shame. Mel, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I should also disclose that I'm also a classic Holden owner, and my H was my first car and is my first car. Yep. Anyway, but with the Colorado, it was Holden's kind of, they were really leaning on it, like a lot of manufacturers, really enjoying the demand for utes. And the Colorado was just about to score a big update that sort of brought it in line with the 7 benchmark for safety. It's a shame that didn't get to happen, but it never made any difference, as we know. So I think the fact that we're still seeing Colorados being sold in December probably is a sign of how many were on boats on their way to Australia on February 17th.
Great point.
February 17th.
Great point.
Which also makes, and it takes a long time to get to Australia on a boat, even from Thailand. And I wouldn't be surprised if some updated models were on their way too.
That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? What do you think? Turn them around, or what do you sell them? You've got to get rid of them, I suppose.
Or I reckon turn them around, because they had enough of a problem as it was trying to shift existing stock and honour.
That's right. And as soon as you sell them, you've got to support them with, parts and service and all that stuff. So maybe they're...
And that has happened before. I remember when Opel pulled the pin, GM again, after, not much more than 12 months, whatever it was, the Zafira was actually on its way to Australia. And I think 100 or so Zafiras made it here, and occasionally they pop up for sale, and you think, lucky. So
wow.
There's an almost
language, Mal. Language. Careful with that.
Did I say crikey? Sorry.
Apologies. Language, mate.
Look, in the interest of complete disclosure, I'll also say that my first car was a Holden HG Belmont Ute. What a beauty. What an absolute great car.
What a nameplate that's been...
Belmont. Fantastic.
I mean, mine's a standard, but to go from standard to Belmont, Holden marketing...
Well, look, I tell you, the car, it came down from... It was on the island of Nauru, and it was brought down to Australia to be sold from honest Don Howard Motors at Concord. I remember buying it from Don Howard.
Good old Don.
Oh, what a bloke. And
not Ron Howard, Don Howard.
Don Howard. It was little Donny. And it was the best car. All I ever did was put oil, a bit of water in it, petrol. That's it. It was just destructible and such a great car. And I used it for a bit of work as well. So it was just great. Now, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just chuck in? Sorry, one final thing. I did notice yesterday that some Holden dealers still have signage up. The dealer in Rosebery still has a big fat Holden logo on the roof.
Yeah.
Yesterday on the 14th of January.
I know. It's a bit of it's all higgledy-piggledy, isn't it? There doesn't seem to be any coordinated, it must come down by this date. No one seems to give much of a toss about it. It's just, when it comes down, it comes down.
But so many have taken these down as well.
Yeah. I was heading up from, Sydney in New South Wales and Australia up to Newcastle, and there's a big Holden dealer up there. It's still got the signage up and all that stuff. Now, look, Crafty, another one that's absolutely in your lane is X-Class Mercedes-Benz, but it was a long and fairly slow goodbye, because it was actually in May that Mercedes-Benz said it was a bold experiment, but we think it hasn't worked. So I know you had some particular thoughts when that car arrived. What are your thoughts on its departure?
I'm not terribly sorry to see it go. We did a lot of driving in that thing, including a few comparison tests and single car tests. I was always disappointed in the build quality and the fact that it was just for want of a better phrasing, tarted up Navara. There could have been a little bit more sort of imagination and thought put into it. It was adequately capable and okay to drive, but if you were a Mercedes-Benz fan, I think if you ever climbed into one of those things, you would be sorely disappointed. It just didn't live up to the badge. It wasn't a prestige sort of ute, that you would imagine would come from them.
Australians see the Mercedes badge as a luxury product, and Australians want the utes to be as close to a passenger vehicle as possible.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. And witnessed the chat about numerous people wanting an AMG version. Because it was more in that world than it probably was in the actual world of work and practicality.
Yeah,
I can definitely understand why they did it. The let's not forget that the Vito, not the Vito, the big one, the Sprinter, was a platform sharing Volkswagen Crafter in the previous generation, and no one ever came up to me and went, "Oh, what are they doing there?" We just accepted it, and that might be because Volkswagen has a lot of those European fundamentals that people also want from a Mercedes. But based on our reader interest in X-Class stories, I remember the moment that we revealed how much Navara was in the X-Class.
Yeah, right.
Did I say X-Trail before?
No,
I meant X-Class. Okay. The moment we realised
you just
how
said
much
X-Trail.
The moment we reported how much Navara was in the X-Class, things started to take off.
Tail off
and then when we drove it and went, there's a lot of Navara in this car.
Yeah.
Just we raged to do as many stories as possible to sate the interest. All of a sudden, they just flatlined.
Yeah.
Sorry, Crafty.
I was just going to say, it's not a surprise that Mercedes-Benz did dip their toe in that, because, we all know how busy and lucrative that slice of the market is, slice of the market. But you'd think if you're going to dip your toe, maybe put a little bit more thought into what you're going to offer.
Maybe
and
up to the ankle, or maybe halfway up the shin.
Mid thigh maybe.
That's dangerous territory.
Where the water's cold,
But realistically, if it were more of a Mercedes, it would have cost a lot more.
For sure.
Well, Chesto makes the point in the story that 2020 there were more sold than in 2019, and I think that's because dealers were keen to shift these vehicles on, and the people who saw the run out maybe got some pretty good deals.
Oh, for sure. And I see a fair few of them around in southern New South Wales, and also still see a fair few newish Colorados. So,
I'm starting to see more and more X-Classes with aftermarket wheels and aftermarket AMG-esque Panamericana grills.
Nice.
Yes,
Oh,
which we
classy.
were predicting
Of course,
early
yeah,
on, but
yeah.
it's just taken a while to start happening. And look, in fairness, it took a while for the Rangers to start wearing F-150 Raptor-esque looking bits.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair few of those around now.
Yes.
Not long before they launched an actual Ranger Raptor, but
Yeah.
they're everywhere now. Every
Well, you know,
person and their dog.
speaking
has
of
done it.
classy cars, the next car that departs, Liberty. So there's a nameplate that's been around in Australia for so long, plus more than 30 years, and the shift into other types of vehicles and the changing taste of Australian new car buyers. All of a sudden, it's gone. It departed in 2020. Amazing.
Yep. And
Yes.
and
There
look,
it is.
you know,
It's
we're all
gone.
going about how people are losing interest in sedans.
Yep.
At the same, you know, you could also look at it as a glass half full thing. People are just simply finding a better solution to their needs in SUVs.
Yep.
And it's not that they're all going for Prados.
Yep.
Things like the Forester are very car-like.
Yep.
And then Subaru itself makes disguised cars in the Outback and XV that they call SUVs. They're just restyled and slightly lifted Liberty wagons and a hatch.
I've got a number for you. 13,727 Camrys were sold in 2020. So be it fleet, be it private, whatever, there is a market for a sedan. Camry owns it, and anyone else trying to go up against it seems like they're just beating their head against a brick wall.
And isn't next in line the C-Class?
I'm not sure.
It was traditionally. But yeah, you're right. The Camry's clearly etched its place, and it's the go-to.
925 Liberties compared to nearly 14,000 Camrys. It's just, it's outrageous. But the last, number 8, lucky last, is the Chevrolet Camaro, which, you know, came in courtesy of HSV, 1,200 2SSs, 350 Z or ZL1s, and now it's a goner. Although I had heard rumour that the new kind of GMSV Enterprise could potentially bring it back, but there's also a question mark about its future in the States, just as a model, is there not? Is that your understanding as well, Mal?
Yeah, so I don't think anything's confirmed yet, but looking into our collective crystal balls, it doesn't seem like there's much of a case for future of Camaro. And I don't think the current generation has ever really fired as well as the Mustang from a design and general appeal point of view. That's my personal opinion. And so then when they brought it to Australia, they brought it much later than the Mustang had managed to arrive here. It cost much more. The greatest USP it had in Australia was the ZL1 when it arrived with the supercharged engine, and then ZL1 manual, which at the time a 477 kilowatt, 881 Newton meter manual supercharged V8. Like, wow. You know, if you're wanting to do that, that was your choice. And it was a pretty crazy experience. I drove it around Sandown in the rain on the launch, and oh boy, it was, special times.
Right.
Glad I made it round. But then Mustang has since topped it with the R-Spec with 522 kilowatts, but only 830 Newton meters.
Right.
But then, you know, throw the Mustang factor in as well. And then Mustang in America, they've managed to do the Shelby GT500 with 567 kilowatts through a dual clutch transmission. Anyway,
that seems like plenty. That's an eloquent sufficiency of horsepower there, I'd say.
Yeah,
and it's adequate.
And once again, I can see why they pushed it, and it seemed like it was going to be it seemed like it had great potential given how many people were putting Chevrolet badges on their Commodores in the last 5 years, and that was before General Motors, you know, killed Holden.
Yeah.
The
thing that killed me about that 2SS when it first arrived is the left to right hand drive swap. A couple of things: you lost the head-up display. They didn't bother to do that because the dash top had to be remodeled, and also they didn't bother to swap the center console. So when you got in the car, you put your elbows straight into a cup holder. And it was the most uncomfortable thing. The padding was on the other side, and you're just going, oh, I don't know whether I could live with this.
I get around it by putting my hands on the steering wheel, James.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Jeez.
Anyway,
right, well, that's very interesting feedback, Mal, which brings us to the Cars Now Garage is what we're going to talk about now. And that was a great wrap up, by the way. Thank you for all your feedback on those 8 cars. Crafty, we're going to kick off with what you've been driving lately. And it's a Japanese product and one that you've got a fair bit of wheel time with. Fill us in, please.
I've been in the new D-Max, the X-Terrain, the top spec. And I, along with my CarsGuide colleagues, such as Matt Campbell, have been impressed. We've done plenty of driving, sort of off-road and on-road. We're coming up to do some towing with it. We haven't yet had a run with it in tow. We've used previous D-Maxes as
it'll be the car trailer with the Abarth 124 on it, won't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
It'd be perfect.
And a Camaro on the back.
Or the Veloster. Yeah.
Not the Veloster, the cheeky Veloster. And
might need a gooseneck.
Yeah.
Again, watch the language, man. And yes, again, been very impressed. We've got one now as a long-termer, so for a few months. So we'll put it through a few different challenges, including towing, as I mentioned.
Yep.
And as well as a full suite of safety tech. It's much nicer to drive than before. It's even more capable off-road because now it has the rear diff lock. And they've also recalibrated the traction control system, the off-road traction control system, whereas before its weaknesses could sort of swiftly be exposed. Now it's more difficult to sort of get the D-Max to its limits.
Yep.
A lot of fun, nice and comfortable. I mean, utes all the time, as we know, with the popularity of the segment becoming more car-like. You know, they'll never be as car-like as what some automotive journos would like the rest of us to believe, but they are pretty comfortable and you know, perfectly fine to spend hours and hours of drive time.
Can you put your finger on, Crafty, what's the main thing that's allowed it to be, on the one hand, more comfortable and on the other hand, more capable off-road? That sounds like a pretty great engineering trick. Is it just the diff or other things as well?
I think the addition of those, like it didn't have a rear diff lock before. People have been asking for that for years. Isuzu pride themselves on, or at least claiming to listen to their customers and potential customers, and that's what they wanted.
Innovative strategy, that one.
Well, you know, some people don't.
That's true.
Plenty don't.
Yes. And it's got a stiffer chassis. There are a few like strictly engineering things that have gone into it, but it's been a lot about the drivetrain. It feels more refined. And that's to do with even sort of paying attention to some might say minor details like surfaces inside and the build quality. Right. in a D-Max, even a lower spec D-Max would be on a par, if not better, probably better than something like the X-Class. So,
Brilliant.
I mean, not hard to do, you might say, but I mean, paying attention to things like that make the overall drive experience a whole lot more enjoyable.
Fantastic. All right. Yeah. Well, it'll be great to catch up with installments as we go, including the towing and all of that.
Oh, yeah. That's brilliant. We're looking forward to towing. Yep.
Brilliant. Now, thank you, Crafty. Mal, you've been in an altogether different kind of vehicle and one that you're pretty excited about. Please fill us in.
Okay. I won't start with a joke.
So are you okay, Mel?
I'm all right. I've been building up to this moment.
You went very still there.
There's a lot of pressure. Very exciting. Anyway, so it's not this week, and so this is it's so big that I'm talking about a car I drove last week.
Yes.
The week before even. The new 4th generation Kia Carnival, and I'm not joking. This is an excellent car for those in the know, and the previous model was as well. And James, I know that you will agree, based on experiences with your family, that is a very, very handy car. But the new one has kind of taken everything that was good about the 3rd generation model and improved it again.
Right.
first and foremost, the design. They've put so much work into injecting design appeal into this car from all angles. I think, have a look at the front of it. They've slimmed down the profile of the car. They've elongated the nose to make it look more SUV-like. They've put the big wheel arch kind of accents around the top to sort of lower its overall height, the feeling of its overall height, perception of the overall height. And then from behind, they've got a full-width taillight that I'm going to say it here. It reminds me of RoboCop, particularly in silver.
Wow, not the El Grande. Is it a bit El Grandish or
the car overall is a bit El Grandish?
And
I've always kind of wished that we could buy El Grands in Australia in a non-grey import fashion, but the Carnival's doing a great job of sating that desire of mine. Anyway, but from behind it, once you see it as RoboCop, you can't unsee it.
Okay.
But so the floor is all new. They've changed the front suspension, rear suspension. It feels a lot like the old one to drive, but that's okay.
All right.
Because the old one was a very nice car to drive. And I say car, that's the key word. A great way to spend many hours behind the wheel. You could, it's the sort of thing that if you need to drive to Brisbane, you wouldn't, groan if someone said you to do it in a Carnival. That's from Sydney for interstate listeners.
I was going to say, I read yesterday that in the States, they've changed the name from Sedona to Carnival. So that's becoming more global. Yeah. So it's going to be called Carnival in the US.
Power to the people. It's a bit like how they dropped Miata with the MX-5,
Yeah.
With the ND. Anyway, so interestingly, there's a few interesting details with it. So only the base model gets wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. And I know CarPlay, Apple users have enjoyed wireless connectivity in a bunch of new models in recent times, but I'm yet to experience wireless Android Auto, and I really look forward to doing it. Good. However, I haven't driven the base model yet.
All right.
So that's only the Carnival S that gets it, and it gets it because it has a different screen to the rest of the lineup.
Right.
It doesn't have SatNav built in, because one of the third parties that provide CarPlay or Android Auto, they're yet to, no one's willing to confirm which of the two it is, are insisting that their mapping product be the primary mapping source in units with wireless connectivity. Anyway, they're going to meet in the middle eventually. Right. So yet to get it. But anyway, you get corded CarPlay and Android Auto. And it may sound like I'm crowing on about Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but anyone who's lived with either of those two products is reluctant to go back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, once you're there, there's no going back. You're absolutely right.
Don't knock it till you try it. Yeah.
True.
Another interesting detail is that no matter what trim level you buy, and they go right up to $70,000, there's no genuine leather. And like on the surface, you think, oh, that's a bit cheap. But is this the time where we just accept that leather ain't great?
Leather isn't a thing anymore. Right.
And, Mercedes taught us in the 70s that they can do synthetic products better than animal hide.
Well, they were absolutely decimating fields of wild MB Texas to upholster their cars.
Exactly. But it was a humane decimation.
The herds were thinned. Put it that way. Not as many MB Texas out there as there was.
Anyway, so it's basically offering more of everything that we've liked about the Carnival in the past, and it's interesting that it's arrived at the same time that Hyundai's managed to forge new ground with the Palisade with its 8-seat option, the bigger than Santa Fe car. Yeah. And over Christmas, I had a Palisade and a Santa Fe in the driveway, and whilst the Palisade offers really handy extra room over a Santa Fe and a traditional large SUV, the difference between it and the Carnival is still monumental. If you need space, you can achieve it by going for a Carnival. Cool. And all you really lose is the perception of adventure capability. It still has decent ground clearance. I think it's 150 plus millimeters of ground clearance, which plenty of small SUVs would do the same.
Yeah.
And so, it lowers the floor and injects that space into usable interior space, which is just so handy. You know, the sliding doors are so much easier to get into than hinged doors, which in turn makes access to the third row so much easier.
Yep.
And the third row is just the most comfortable, space for adults to sit all the way back there once you're there, compared to any SUV that I've experienced anyway.
Yeah, I always think it's odd that our very own Justin Hilliard goes weak at the knees when you mention Carnival. I mean, he's without kids at this point, but he still loves that car. He'd have several. He'd have several in the garage if he could. Probably one of each generation.
He clearly enjoys hauling around white goods on the weekend, I think.
Yep, he might. He might. But anyway, look, Mal, we'll leave it there. Thank you for that. And I will finish it off with a quick rundown on the Mercedes-Benz GLA 250. So the little SUV, it's the 250 is $66,500 before you put it on the road. 2-litre turbo petrol 4, 8-speed auto, all-wheel drive. It's about 1.5 tonnes. It produces 165 kilowatts, 350 Newton meters. You can expect 0 to 100 in a bit under 7 seconds, which isn't hanging around. And that's one of the things I'd say about it. I'd describe it as frisky. I was driving thinking, this is quite a frisky little car. You got that maximum torque from 1,800 RPM, and with 8 ratios, you're pretty much always in the sweet spot. It's a very easy car to drive. I was surprised too by the amount of rear space. We did a bit of a family road trip in it over the Christmas, New Year period. Found it comfortable. It was really an effortless cruiser. Had ventilated front seats. Thank you. In summer, they're so great. And lots of connectivity options and very easy to live with. Sorry?
I was just going to say it's. I haven't actually driven the new GLA yet, but it's much more of an SUV than the one before.
Right.
Which, if you park it next to Mazda 3, it looks just like a hatch. Whereas the new one is, the sort of SUV shape, and it kind of follows with what they've done with the GLB in that it's unmistakably SUV.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
As a lot of other brands are going more coupe-like, Mercedes seems to be asserting its SUV status.
Well, this one anyway. The one of the downsides I thought was a little bit hesitant at time to actually, pick up the throttle and pick up the pace. A touch lagging, not a lot in it, but just occasionally. Also, I thought to myself, look, a top spec CX-5 is about 15k less than this car. And you're going to want a Mercedes-Benz to be paying that premium, I suppose. There are other options around there. And over more than 500 kilometres, 300 kilometres of which easy was freeway driving, we only got 9.8 litres per 100. So I wasn't exactly impressed by that fuel economy. It's not outrageous, but it's not what you'd probably expect. So there it is.
Wow, that's what I got out of the Kodiaq long-termer.
Right.
Which is a bigger car again. And I was putting 3 kids in it, smaller kids than yours, but filling the boot. Regularly.
Well, look, there's also the fact that I'm probably a pretty crap driver, so that impacts fuel economy at various stages along the way.
I was going to say that,
Yeah. Oh, I just assumed it was common knowledge.
Yeah. I don't believe it for a second.
Best to call it out. Now, look, we'll just quickly move on from the garage and look at some of the feedback we got on our most recent podcast episode, and that was at the end of 2020 on best Aussie cop cars. And we went through a rundown.
Well, behind me, obviously.
I would say that one, though, is a Pursuit rather than an Interceptor. Of course, the big.
We should make the point to those who are unfamiliar with the Mad Max movies that is that's a fictional police vehicle. That's not an actual police vehicle. Just in case anyone thinks they need to call Main Force Patrol.
That was done under controlled conditions.
That's correct, yeah.
Ford never put A9X wheel arch flares on the XB Falcon.
That's right.
That's to illustrate that's to illustrate
or Sunray's
dangers of towing.
Great cars. But well, in terms of best Aussie cop cars, Flaming Hedgehog came back at us saying, "What makes you think they were any good in the first place?" And Oggy said, "Well, which cars were better?" And Flaming Hedgehog said, "That wasn't the question. Responding to a question with a question is not an answer." And Oggy said, "I wasn't answering. I was asking a question, and you responded with a statement." which isn't an answer. I just thought that was absolutely great, great exchange.
Great engagement.
Yes.
Very, very engaged.
Yes.
All good friends. TGV gave us a lot of info about the current status of which cars are used where, but he also made the point that he was surprised that Toyota, with the V6 petrol Camry, complete with double wishbone, independent rear suspension, Toyota either hasn't bothered to get a fleet contract with the police, or the New South Wales police don't want to follow up with a Camry. And we were only just a few minutes ago talking about the staggering numbers of Camrys that are sold each year, and it is a bit surprising.
Yeah, given seems to be the Sonata's big injection of life.
Well, that's it. And Ryu makes the point. Can Sonata N-Line be even a highway patrol type car? You got 290 horsepower, which is pretty high, and I'd say that's well within the bounds of possibility. Now, De Kook says another great car that would fit the classic template will probably be the new rear-wheel drive Mazda 6 with naturally aspirated V6, powerful, reliable, should be as stylish as Italian Carabinieri Giulias, which come to mind from, what was it? What was that Michael Caine film with the mini?
Italian Job.
Italian Job, thank you. Yes, come to mind from that.
On the roof of the art museum.
Correct. The factory. It was Alpha Factory.
That too.
Anyway.
Yeah. Lingotto.
Let's see if says pre-Holden and Commodore. I think that's intentional rather than a spelling error. My favourite was the Studebaker Lark in powder blue of Vic Police. And for those watching on YouTube, we do in fact have a picture of such a vehicle. And he entered into a bit of banter with Flaming Hedgehog about the bonnet-mounted siren and how terrific it was. So thank you for that. Let's see if.
Great for pedestrians.
Now, our old mate Hammer Rocks chipped in and said,
good old Hammer.
In the mid-'80s, my dad was pulled over by a Mitsubishi Cordia Turbo New South Wales highway patrol car. As a young kid, I thought it was so cool. I even remember asking the officer if it was fast. Can you imagine you as your dad, you're being booked and your kid's talking to the cop about whether or not the patrol car is fast. So well done, Hammer. Thank you. I'm sure your father loved that. And then Birdie chimed in. He had a bit of chat about batteries. We were saying some of the shortcomings with the replacements for Falcon and Commodore, particularly BMW Diesel 5 Series, etc., had been suffering some drainage problems on the battery. Jen chipped in, said plenty of legendary Australian policing vehicles. My personal choice, and he makes sure to point out, not through any real involvement, would be a Victorian Divvy van, and he reckons the VF's still in use as a divisional van, a New South Wales paddy wagon, Commodores, K10 Charger, South Australian powder blue, what a brilliant sight that would be in your rear view mirrors, and the Cordia Turbo, and XC to XE yellow Victorian highway. So very close to your car there, Crafty, I must say. But thank you for that, Birdie. And thank you for all the feedback. And we'll move on from there to Muskwatch. Right.
We freeze on Mel's face. So that
I liked your Muttley laugh there, Crafty.
Are the shoulders moving as well? That's good. There's a bit of Muttley going around. Now,
I'm Sinead O'Connor today.
Lo and behold, he's become the world's richest person. Okay, so Elon is now the world's richest person. But Yahoo Finance reports that during the week just gone, Amazon founder and CEO Jeff Bezos briefly regained his title as the world's richest person on Tuesday, only to lose it just as quickly as Elon Musk and Tesla shares made a bounce back. So the Tesla share price tends to impact this. But as we speak, Elon is once again the richest person in the world.
You're at number 3, JC?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, we sometimes get on the phone. We don't want to make it a cartel in terms of the billions at our disposal. But now Elon's worth $195 billion US. So in Australian dollars, 250 odd. That's a lot of billions. And on Twitter, the Tesla owners of Silicon Valley, and that would be an interesting organization to be a member of, made the point Elon Musk is now the richest person in the world, 190 billion, blah, blah, blah. And Elon said, how strange. And then followed it up a minute later with, well, back to work. So that was his response to becoming the world's richest person. And at the same time, here's the world's richest person posting up a meme depicting a priest with hands clasped and eyes to the heavens, labeled "me trying to live a normal, productive life." And that's because this priest is being confronted by a very handsome young woman displaying some provocative body language with a strategically placed label saying sea shanties. Now, that's because Elon is obviously a fan of Sea of Thieves, which is a game where sea shanties are collected. And I would say this particular woman knows the whereabouts of one or more of them. So I thought it was pretty funny, and those on YouTube will be able to see it. But speaking of the Tesla share price, since we finished off last year, which was in December, the Tesla share price is now $854, a little over, and it was $633 when we last checked in on it at the end of last year. It hit a high of 882 on Monday. But Jalopnik, a site that I frequent and quite like, I'm sure some of our listeners and viewers do as well, has made the point. Mercedes Streeter, the author of this story, says Tesla would take nearly 1,600 years to make the amount of money that stock market values it at. So, you know, on the current price to earnings ratio, 1,600 years to get to the value that the market has put on it, which I think says it all in terms of whether we're looking at something of a bubble on the share price. But with that, we have reached the finish line. But at this point, it's important to mention that due to a classic cock-up on my part, we made more than one Greatest Hits Holiday Series compilation episodes than we needed. So we're going to post it on Tuesday. The Best of Muskwatch 2020. Look out for it. We'll post it up on Tuesday. But I want to say thank you, Crafty.
No, thank you.
And thank you, Mel.
You're welcome, James.
And thanks to
Thank you as well.
And thanks to our breaker of chairs, VP of Talent Strategy and Senior Odd Job Delegator, Mr. Pritchard, for his tenacity and skill in making this show look and sound half decent. Today, he's wearing a T-shirt saying Nakatomi Plaza Christmas Party 1988. Of course, Mr. Pritchard was a former employee of the Nakatomi Corporation. He's got carbon fiber pants and fish tank platform shoes. They're white, goldfish in the heels, absolutely amazing.
And he rocks them, yes.
He does. He rocks them. They're never going to look better than when he's wearing them.
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts. You can find CarsGuide on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, please rate and review us. Remember, you can also watch us on YouTube. And if you are already, make sure you subscribe to the CarsGuide YouTube channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. But before we go, two nuns are driving down the highway when they notice the devil steering the car next to them. Driver says, "Quick, Sister Judy, show him your cross." "Okay," replies Sister Judy, turning to the devil. "Oi, you bastard, I've got a bone to pick with you."
The importance of apostrophes.
Yes, that's right.